My name is George Dodd. I am responsible for business development for sustainability services in North America for a company called Kyndryl. Spent about half my career in the oil and gas industry, half in financial markets, mostly around kind of designing technology that support both. Really, it was kind of at a career juxtaposition in 2020, trying to figure out like, okay, what's my next move? You've done a lot of these programs. What's next? And then, I'd earned my FRM, was a member of GARP, saw this seminar on climate risk, and I was like, well, what's climate risk? And honestly, once I started to understand the economic and financial impacts of climate change, it was like, whoa. So I pretty much spent the next few years, I built out the climate risk practice at my former employer. Ultimately, it's my intention. We really spend kind of, the first few years focused on how do we quantify, how do we measure, how do we, explain the urgency? And I think we're all kind of seeing that now in the market, but then drift back towards the energy side and really kind of focus on, solutions around energy. Late 2022, early 2023, I got caught up in the tech downturn, found myself both laid off and simultaneously hired another company that had a few months out for a start date. I always wanted to pursue a master's degree. I knew that this is where my career is going. And, I was like, let me give this a shot, and kind of led me to Johns Hopkins. I kind of like to have a structured approach to learning about it, right? If you get into the energy transition, you can tend to narrow in right away and focus on one specific area or one specific challenge. When I wanted to learn about the finance, I went and earned my CFA charter. When I wanted to learn about climate risk, the SCR, because those provided kind of a broad structured curriculum that gave you kind of like, okay, here's kind of the bigger picture, and then you can kind of zoom in on certain things. And I feel like to an extent, that's kind of what I got from the program, is to think about things that I hadn't even thought about, right? You think about the sustainable development aspects of the energy transition, right? And how other countries are operating. So the program is really kind of broad in terms of its scope. It gives you a lot of different opportunities to kind of things you want to dig into and to find out more about. Additionally, there's an opportunity to really work with, your professors are in this field, right? So they're super personable, they're accessible, they give you time outside of class. So it's good to you also kind of bounce ideas off them. And you've got kind of the flexibility also to kind of learn and pursue things that you want. But also, if you have an idea, how viable is it? And, it's great to have that kind of expertise. To kind of bounce ideas off of and to talk to. I wasn't really anticipating thinking about the global issues, but incidentally, spent a good bit of time. One of my main papers was around Cambodia. We spent a lot of time thinking about the developmental challenges in Africa. So I think, those of us in developed nations, which again are probably going to be the largest, group of students, we can be a bit myopic about our own challenges and what we're facing here and not think about kind of the broader context, because ultimately this transition has to happen for everybody. And, the way that developed nations developed can't be the path forward that other nations take. This also challenged a good bit of my assumptions, really taught me how to interrogate things. I kind of came into the program, having spent time in the oil and gas sector, seeing hydrogen as this great opportunity, great to preserve so much infrastructure, it's just swapping things out. And then you start to dig into techno-economic analysis and you realize, that's a lot more complex than I thought. So it kind of challenged my thinkings and assumptions around it. So kind of that to me was probably the biggest unexpected benefit. You learn how to approach it from multiple angles, right? You start to think through like, or what are the policy incentives? What are the regulatory incentives? What are the economics? How could it be financed? So when we're putting in these solutions that ultimately will impact billions of people, will impact the $100 trillion economy, it gives you kind of the preparation to think about it from all the different aspects that have to come together to make something work. And I think that's, a benefit from the program that you're not going to get anywhere else. One thing I think that's really cool is, a lot of my classmates, we obviously live in different parts of the country. So there's different challenges. I was, Jersey, born and raised. I've lived here my whole life. Super population dense, generally a little bit more progressive on some of these issues. But to hear about kind of the experiences as well, we've got a classmate who's in Alaska, right? To hear about the energy transition from his perspective, and how, the geography, the population density make a lot of things not viable. So it was great to hear about the different perspectives from folks who are in different parts of the US, but also folks who are in different parts of the world. I mean, I loved it. You know, we're about a year into the program. We have the residency, so you've been on, you've been in class with all of your classmates every single week, for basically up at, with a few exceptions, every week you've been in class with them. You worked on projects with them. So that for me was the best part, was actually meeting your classmates in person. We had a really great cohort. We got along, we really just formed a pretty good bond throughout, and then the residency experience certainly solidified it. We also took some really cool field trips while we were there. So I won't spoil anything for those who are considering the program, but some really cool stuff. Prior to entering kind of the management and technology consulting industry, I spent about 8 years working in restaurants, starting with as busboy, running a restaurant before I jumped into kind of the corporate world. It's kind of interesting because I was allowed to do a capstone that really focused on the energy transition from the restaurant industry perspective. The restaurant industry is kind of the tip of the entire food service industry, and I kind of developed an interest around, sustainable agriculture and also kind of the convergence of energy and agriculture. Neither one of these systems really built in a way that was sustainable or equitable. And in many ways, the challenges with the energy, there are solutions in agriculture and vice versa. So the restaurants are kind of where it all sort of comes together. So it's not, pretty cool opportunity for me to kind of look at some of the things I've done in the past, and maybe they could shape kind of how I go about things in the future. I've spent, nearly 2 decades in, technology and management consulting, really focused around kind of markets, both energy markets and financial markets. One of the real benefits of the program is, I love to design technology solutions to solve problems. So in many ways, the program kind of taught me about all these problems I hadn't been thinking about, and all these challenges I hadn't been thinking about. And then, for me, professionally, this is an opportunity to kind of grow, develop technology solutions to help accelerate these. Technology can be a really significant enabler, both in the transition, but also in kind of identifying opportunities for resilience and sustainable development. I think for me, just do it. Sign up, take the first class, and then all of a sudden you find yourself, 20 months in, you're like, oh, I'm almost done. So I think for me, just go for it.